Time for the market report. More about row crop acreage.
Indeed, what's really going on? And a closer look at cattle. But first, the numbers. What were the week's biggest gains and losses? And then a cattle update. We take a look into what's driving that sector right now. And finally, in our row report, more fallout from the Prospective Plantings Report. An MSU expert gives his thoughts. So, markets closed once more on the upswing. Both row crops and livestock split. Let's take a look. The week's biggest gain, live cattle, up nearly 8 cents, more than a 3% increase from the previous week. The week's biggest loss, sugar, down about 3/4 of a cent, nearly a 5% decrease from the previous week. So it's been a little bit since we last looked into cattle. We'll have more soon, but for now, market analyst Chris Robinson says recent price rises could be a gift to sellers who may have missed the last one in the fall.
You know, it's interesting. You know, we had an $85 sell-off, and then we've clawed it all back. We're back to contract highs. We had a $40 sell-off in fat cattle. Now we're making new highs in the June cattle. So the market that everybody thought had been broken because of whatever, there's a million different reasons. It's all come back. At the end of the day, we don't have the supply that we need. The packers, the math is, they're back in the black. The cash market, although it had a little weakness, continues to show up. And I think the one disconnect that I was surprised of, and I'll tell you, we had a 10% correction in the stock market, roughly. And that we had a little bit of a sell-off in the cattle along with it. But cattle has now almost disconnected from the stock market. This last 2 or 3 days, it's been amazing to see the strength. And I'm interested to see where it's going to continue to go. But we've been through this before where it gets very, very, we're at all-time highs. When the correction comes, it's very, very severe. So this is a kind of a mulligan for everybody. If you feel you missed the high before the last break, this is a gift. I even think that if the spot corn stays roughly where it is right now, that's not going to be an issue. I think as long as the packers are continue to be in the black and that market holds in there, the big question is this. You led in with talking about, are we going to get a recession? If we have, expensive gasoline for months and months and months, will people say, you know what, I'm done paying for expensive beef? We've been hearing that narrative for 3 or 4 years now. When is the consumer going to say no more, no more? They keep showing up. So that's been, I think, surprised a lot of people. I would continue to watch that as well. Is the consumer going to continue to pay up for beef if this continues to go on for, another month or 2 or 3?
Last week, we talked about the Prospective Plantings Report released by the USDA and the effects it had on the markets. This week, we continue that discussion with MSU Extension economist Dr. Will Maples. He says that it appears Mississippi is leaning in the same direction as the rest of the nation.
So with the Prospective Planting Report this year we got, it kind of tracked the directions we thought it would on most of the commodities. Corn down to a little over 95 million acres, soybeans up to 84.7 million acres. And that was expected. We had that record corn crop last year. Supplies have been weighing down on this market. Corn acres had to drop. They had to be pulled back. There was some questions around it. Some people thought that 95 million number still a little high for corn acres. There's a little bit with this uncertainty around fertilizer cost right now due to the Iran war situation that's really thrown the nitrogen market into a tailspin here in the last few weeks. In Mississippi, we've actually got all our corn planted already for the most part across the state. We've had good weather through March, and everybody that wanted planted corn got their corn planted already. So we're really off to an early start here. But Midwest, that's really going to drive where the acres are, and as we kind of see there. Soybean number, it had come up as kind of we expected. Profitability of soybeans versus corn coming through the winter has favored soybeans. That 84.7 million acres is a good number, I think. That's kind of about where I had expected it. But so, those were the two big crops we really look at, especially here in Mississippi, and they went the directions we thought they would. Cotton market has rallied here over the past month. We're up, the December contract's up at 75 cents now. So after about 3 years, we're finally seeing some life into the cotton market. So that might pull in some more acres going forward. So we get plantings going across the southern part of the U.S., but plantings are down, but it'll be interesting to see where we end up in June. So we saw a similar pattern. We pulled corn acres back about over 30% here in Mississippi. We planted a record number of acres last year of corn in the state, 930,000. We have pulled that. It's going to be 30% lower from this report, and we've bumped up our soybean acres. So last year we planted 1.8 million acres of soybeans. We're finally back up over 2 million acres. That's kind of where Mississippi usually plants in terms of soybeans. With the tariff situation and so forth. So we talked about last year, we pulled acres back in Mississippi for soybeans a good bit. So same pattern, we are planting more soybeans and less corn in the state of Mississippi, just like nationally.
And that's it for a deeper look into the markets.